Theme parks like Alton Towers and Thorpe Park are no stranger to unique IPs. Over the years, we've seen lots of unique branding opportunities that have been given to some theme parks. Very few would have any reason to spark controversy though. What if I told you that there was a themed section of Alton Towers where a single person's name was the IP, and that person's name actually holds a lot of controversy and weight behind it? There is a whole segment of Alton Towers dedicated to children, with many rides themed around the characters imagined up by the children's author David Walliams. You might be thinking, is David Walliams a children's author? Or you might be thinking, is that the weird guy from like Britain's Got Talent? Yes, yeah, he is a children's author. And some of the older folks here watching the videos might be thinking, is that this guy? And yes, it is. So today's video, we're going to be unpacking who is David Walliams, why was he selected as an IP for Alton Towers?
Hello everybody!
And talking about whether that is a good idea or not, based on controversies and the reputation of David Walliams today. Strap in because there's going to be some things that you probably didn't know about on this video. So David Walliams is a 50-something-year-old man from the United Kingdom. He has been generously described as an actor, comedian, television personality.
At least she made a career miming. You know, you can be...
The one we're going to be focusing on today a little more is author. In the UK, David Walliams is most famous for his sketch show Little Britain and Come Fly With Me. Now I'm getting this in early. Because I'm a pilot, I was a big fan of Come Fly With Me, and a lot of aviators still regularly make references to this show. But I think if you were to go back and watch it now, you would gasp at every scene. There are some things that are just not deemed okay nowadays in this sketch show. It has not aged well, and a lot of people do wonder, should it have been acceptable when it was released either? Now, it did happen in this order. So Little Britain and Come Fly With Me were released, and then David Walliams decided to start releasing children's novels. You might sit on one side of the fence saying, yeah, people can have some adult senses of humour, some controversial senses of humour, and still be safe around children. You can make content for children that isn't dodgy. People can separate that. And you might be sitting on the other side of the fence and saying, what is someone who is famous for Little Britain wanting to do with children's books industry? It's obviously very profitable, but I don't think David Walliams was particularly broke when he decided to go down this route. He seemed to actually be quite successful in reinventing himself as Britain's Roald Dahl, and he seemed untouchable at this point. And most notably, he was also one of the judges on Britain's Got Talent. This hasn't got anything really to do with this video, but I was just watching this and I thought, I was so blind to how stupid BGT was as a kid. Amanda specifically is throwing the plates at Bambus here. That guy in the crowd clearly knows a camera's on him, and that cannot be an organic reaction to what is happening on stage. that just isn't. That's not real, is it? These guys in the crowd know that they're mic'd up. They're probably aiming for Bambus. Amanda is just actually a loony, isn't she? I love her. That kid clapping like this, doesn't want to be there, but she knows she's got a mic. An extra bit of lore here. Anyone who thinks that this video is fake and that he's just playing to a soundtrack, or he's not actually balancing those things, I know Bambus in real life. His dog really likes me, and this is all real. The only thing that I can tell you is fake about this act is Bambus's hair. It's not real. He is bald. The judge is saying umpa instead of opa.
as well. It is just brilliant. And one final observation about this. Is that another miniature David Walliams behind David Walliams? Why have they sat those people there? Is that like to throw us off?
I am the age where, as Britain's Got Talent was getting popular, I weirdly was the target demographic, but there was always something weird about Britain's Got Talent that made me feel really naughty for watching it as a kid or teenager. I felt like, oh, I'm watching an adult TV show, because there was always kind of sleazy undertones and plenty of innuendo. A lot of that was fed into by David Walliams. And as I've grown older, I realised that the show is kind of aimed at families, which is like weird to look back on in hindsight. Obviously, this is just personal anecdote. Maybe you didn't feel uncomfortable watching some of the stuff on Britain's Got Talent. The images that are flashing in my head, I am still uncomfortable with. There was always this sort of undertone of David Walliams fancying Simon Cowell, making sort of flirtatious comments to him, but also bringing him out of his hardened shell, which made David Walliams seem like a very lovable character on Britain's Got Talent. But I do believe that is what he was. It was a character.
Obviously, hindsight's a really wonderful thing, but what do you guys think of the fact that I would say an entire nation were laughing at David Walliams making unsolicited advances towards Simon Cowell, who clearly wasn't into it? Is that comedy, guys? I don't know if I'm being too woke here, but looking back on it, that's a pretty weird thing for us to be finding hilarious, right? Don't know. Maybe I'm just a Gen Z, you know?
In 2018, there started to be some warning signs about David Walliams. David Walliams had attended the President's Club charity dinner at London's Dorchester Hotel, which is an event that would later be exposed as a hotbed of sexual harassment and inappropriate behaviour towards the female hostesses.
I've just found out that they actually don't run this charity event anymore, but some famous people who have attended are people like Vernon Kay, Jimmy Savile, Theo from Dragon's Den, and of course David Walliams. So quite the mix of people. By grouping these people together, by the way, I am not making any accusations. I'm just reading from Wikipedia.
Of course, he wasn't the only one there, but it was the first time people had some real allegations towards what he was like off camera. So the President's Charitable Trust is a reputable charity for children. It's sort of a secretive men's-only dinner, but it has raised a lot of money for charity. Can I just say, this isn't necessarily related, but just for a little bit of critical thinking here. Just because a celebrity gives money to charity, it does not necessarily reflect who they are as a person, okay? You can't purchase away reputation, really, in my personal opinion. Just going to encourage you to use some critical thinking, not necessarily related to this charity event. I clearly don't know what goes on there because it's secretive and men's only. There was a brochure that welcomed the guests to this event that said, "The President's Club shall accept no responsibility and shall not be held liable for any actions of its members, staff, or event attendees that amount to harassment." Why would they need that warning there? Seems a bit random. That's like me flying a plane and saying, by the way, if we crash, it will probably be because of the wind. 360 of the most powerful men in Britain gathered at this event. Wouldn't you just love to be there? There genuinely did seem like there were some nice people there. Allegedly, 130 women were hired to be hostesses for this night. A majority of them were young students looking to make some extra money, and their dress code was something black and skimpy with matching underwear and high heels. They were allowed to drink while working, but did have to sign a 5-page non-disclosure agreement, which apparently they weren't allowed to read. What they weren't necessarily aware of was that they were walking into what was described as a night of systematic sexual harassment. What's all this got to do with David Walliams then? There was 360 men. Does that mean he takes only 0.3% of the blame? Well, he wasn't just a guest. He actually was hosting, and this wasn't his first time hosting either, so he did know what the event held. He was announcing the things that were going to be bid off at auction, and he'd also offered one of the most sought-after prizes, which was in his new book about
The world's worst
children. They could name the children in the book. Literally just, who cares? Am I being silly and just swap out the names when you're reading it? There's plenty of fan fictions that do that for you for free. I am shouting. During this auction, Walliams offered an extra prize. Rather than let it run its course, he doubled the character naming prize opportunity for £100,000 each. And although this did get some extra money for charity, it became problematic because he was also profiting from an event that sexually abused lots of women. One of the things that were able to be auctioned off was some work at a plastic surgery clinic, where Walliams brought up one of the hostesses and asked her to point to parts of her body that she'd had work done on. And the service that was being auctioned was described as a job for the missus, which people thought was pretty misogynistic or just displayed a bit of toxic masculinity. What do you think? If you're finding this interesting, give it a like and a subscribe and notifications on if you're interested. Because don't worry, you're not going to get spam with notifications. I don't post that often, but I don't want you to miss it if I do. There were other prizes like a night at a lap dancing establishment. So what the guests at this event didn't know was that the Financial Times had done an undercover investigation and had hidden as a hostess and had reported that throughout the night they'd been groped several times, including hands on bum, up skirts, just lots of unsolicited touching, really. It wasn't limited to just touching either. One guest even exposed himself to a hostess. Several of them were asked to join the guests in their bedrooms. One was even asked if they were a prostitute. But there was £2 million raised for children's charity. Doing it for the kids. And even more embarrassing, the organisations returned the money because they didn't want to be associated with the event. So how did Walliams react? You know, the legend that has that kids section in Alton Towers. He said he didn't see any of that happen, didn't see it so. And the reason that this was so controversial for David Walliams specifically was his reputation as the lovable, family-friendly rebrand that he'd been working on for so many years was just crumbled, really. When this story broke about David Walliams, bookstores decided to remove some of his books from their shelves. The owner of Chicken and Frog was particularly scathing with their review, and they said, even if Walliams claimed ignorance when the highly inappropriate suggested names were mentioned for his auction lot or the plastic surgery to add spice to your wife, he should have walked away, and he did not. Look, everyone makes mistakes, and I do recommend forgiving people so that you're less angry about your entire life, but I don't think it changes the fact that maybe as a brand, David Walliams is not a good choice for a kids section of a theme park. Unfortunately for David, these scandals kept coming, as when he had a microphone attached to him during the filming of Britain's Got Talent, his understanding was that they were no longer filming at that moment, but he had been calling an elderly contestant a C word and had some quite cruel commentaries about some contestants who had bravely put themselves on stage for the competition. Essentially, people's basic human dignity wasn't really valued by David Walliams when he was off camera, which seemed a high contrast to the empathetic, lovable, going out of your way for those who are overlooked kind of character he has on Britain's Got Talent as a judge.
What was that?
I will just say this about human nature. People love to see celebrities fall when they're not the likeable person that they are on TV. And you do have to wonder why that is. Is it like vengeful? Is it jealousy? Is it like a hunger for justice? I don't know what it is, but people love to see people knocked from their podiums. And Walliams' response to that controversy was, oh, that was never meant to be a public conversation. Which, do you know how, like, that doesn't necessarily correlate with whether it was wrong or not? I'm telling myself this as well at the same time here, but we shouldn't be saying behind people's backs what we wouldn't say to their faces, right? Isn't that what we're taught as kids? I think that's like very basic human being behaviour. Anyway, oh, David. Even Piers Morgan called David Walliams one of the nastiest frauds on TV. The scandal. The drama. Now, this one I've not actually really seen, so I'm just going to read out what I've read here, but I don't know what this actually means. Apparently, on a Christmas episode of Would I Lie to You, Walliams gave a Nazi salute.
What we understand is that during the recording of the Christmas special of Would I Lie to You, David Walliams' teammate, the actress Helen George, who's appeared on Call the Midwife, was telling an anecdote about how she hurt her wrist from waving too hard during the Strictly Come Dancing tour. She then demonstrated that wave to the other contestants, to the studio audience, and David Walliams joined in. What we understand is it was then that he made a Nazi-style salute.
Nope, I don't know either. I didn't see that. But apparently that was the final straw for David Walliams in 2025, which means the theme park section has been open for a while by this point. So let's go back to the actual theme park then. Just before I do, I want to show you very, very quickly the sponsor of this video. We got a sponsor. I'm just kidding. Actually, it's myself. So for some affordable, unique theme park merch, you can check the link in the description for my Louis Poo store, which is home to pins and holographic stickers, all related to theme parks. They're so unique, you won't find these in actual theme parks. They were designed by me, created by me. They're not drop shipped or whatever someone thought recently. That is hilarious. And when people do order from my store, I do tend to write little notes in there. And also everyone gets free stuff as well with it. So, but not socks. I should make that clear. I did mention that on one live stream. Okay, thank you. In this section of Alton Towers, we used to have Cloud Cuckoo Land, a sort of whimsical, fantastical world with twirling toadstool and other stuff. It had a flagship ride, which was Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And you might be thinking, oh, is it Roald Dahl World? No, it just was Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, which was a great little water ride. But that quietly closed. And Cloud Cuckoo Land was sort of destined to die at that point. Apparently there were literally just weeds growing around the place. And it looked a little derelict and empty and didn't have the same charm it used to. They had the Frog Hopper, the Gallopers Carousel, Wobble World, and the 4D Cinema. It just still felt incomplete and neglected. For over 2 years, though, there had been talks behind the scenes at Merlin to partner with one of the, self-titled new Roald Dahl to spruce up this area a little bit. In 2018, he'd been the UK's best-selling author 2 years in a row, which, can you believe that? After the Bible, I think the Bible came first. I think the Bible's the most sold book in the world. He had a colourful cast from Gangster Granny
Do the trick.
to, I don't know anymore, so let me look at the list. Rat Burger. And I'm going to stop there. So Walliams wanted a way to bring his literary world to life, and Alton Towers needed anything to happen to Cloud Cuckoo Land. So it was a match made in Stoke. In 2019, the announcement was out. There was going to be a David Walliams world. Rumours had been spread that there was going to be a unique, groundbreaking attraction. Sorry for laughing. I just know what the ride is that they're referring to. And David Walliams seemed pretty upbeat about it as well. And in 2020, David Walliams announced on his Twitter, Gangster Granny, the ride, was going to open in David Walliams' world at Alton Towers. And Gangster Granny was the most recognisable and popular story by David Walliams. In fact, I'm pretty sure there was a movie about it I vaguely remember seeing. And the ride was going to be placed in the Wobble World building, which occasionally was used for the House of Monsters thing at Halloween as well. You would onboard a royal carriage and take a tour of the crown jewels, only to find that they'd been stolen by Granny and Ben in the greatest jewel heist in history. No, Granny and Ben, you crims, you absolute crims. If you haven't ridden Gangster Granny, honestly, just don't bother. It's just not worth it. Some of the effects are okay. It's just a dark ride with some projectors and fart sound effects. Which is kind of like watching a Louis Poo video, right? It should be Louis Poo the ride. It's pretty underwhelming, but it is for kids. But when I was at the age that I think Gangster Granny is targeted at, I was wanting to ride the Smiler. So some additional fun facts about the Gangster Granny ride is that David Walliams actually did some voice acting in it himself, playing the little boy. He also plays some of the guards. Another interesting thing is that Tony Ross, who was the original illustrator for David Walliams' books, wasn't available to do the illustrations for this ride. So they had a different artist called John Taylor try and very closely replicate the same style of illustrations, but it wasn't the original artist. The ride doesn't need any form of seatbelt or lap bar because A, it moves at 1 mile an hour,
And B, the ride design specifically has the high-sided vehicles to prevent any thingamajiggies falling out of the car. And the car uses Garmondale Engineering's Spin Master design, meaning it can spin 360 degrees while on a track. And it can actually spin up to 5 RPM. Yep, that is 5 rotations per minute. So that means approximately 90 degrees every 3 seconds. That's crazy, guys. That is crazy.
But for Alton Towers, the timing of David Walliams' world could not have been worse, because it was 2020. Do you guys remember what happened then? So it's postponed to May 2021, and the excitement on the opening day was, I was going to say immeasurable, but it was pretty measurable because it had about 1 hour queue time. David Walliams said that the Gangster Granny ride has his seal of approval.
Immersive. The great thing is...
Right, that's a pretty underwhelming response for the guy that has an entire ride dedicated to books he's written. Like, can you just imagine a 50-something-year-old man twiddling around on Gangster Granny the ride and probably being filmed for like the duration of the ride, which is quite a long time to hold a smile for? Do you think he sat in the seat and was like, can't really see out of this? Because you can't. The one good thing to come out of this, I think, was Raj's bouncy bottom burp, which is the best ride at Alton Towers.
She knows she's being filmed, there's absolutely no way.
Always has the best deals just for you. Now,
Well, yeah, that's a given.
So Raj is essentially a character David Walliams wrote as a boss man. And if you're thinking, well, that's a bit odd, well, there are lots of things in David Walliams' books that even teachers have pointed out are probably not appropriate, such as use of the word slag, misogynistic character stereotypes like a girl who loves shopping but has nothing in her brain. That is me. And I know that it's thundering outside today, and the pathetic fallacy was also very much showing its face at the open day with all of the rain at the World of David Walliams opening day. So lots of people did make it to the open day, but do you know who was missing? David Walliams. He wasn't there. He wasn't there for the open day of his own, not just ride, section of a park. He wasn't even there. John Wardley goes to everything. I'm sure he was at a Theme Park Worldwide meetup once. So people did have some concerns about this section of the park, in that some of the buildings were sort of unused and hadn't really been filled with anything, so it looked unfinished. Many people thought it was actually a lot smaller in real life, that section of the park, and you could basically complete it in 5 minutes. There's not really a lot to do there. And there was also, of course, the big old elephant in the room, that is David Walliams' reputation.
Something that I wish I had mentioned originally in this video was this clip that I'm about to show you, and I don't know if I should even put any commentary over it, but just have a look at this and tell me what you see.
What was going through the minds of the Merlin Entertainment's team when they picked David Walliams as an IP? Do you think we should still have it there? Do you think it even matters? Do you think that we should just move on, ride Gangster Granny the ride and let the kids enjoy it? And I will say to that I very rarely see anyone in that section of the park still. It's like probably more dead than Cloud Cuckoo Land was. I'd never seen a queue for Gangster Granny. Raj's bouncy bottom burp is always literally no one on it. Carousel, same thing. They even sort of broke the theming with one of the temporary rides that they put there for a couple of years. But that was the only reason that I would really go into that section of the park. What do you think? Is it unusual for someone to be switching from creating content like this to writing books for children? I'm going to leave it on that cliffhanger. And if you're interested in hearing about the ride cliffhanger, watch this video. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe. It means so much to me, and give us a like if you have enjoyed it. And comment something that you would like to hear more about as a theme part of video essay. Okay, bye. Thank you for watching.